A long night. A Democrat-backed measure on voting rights fails to advance out of the Senate. We're on Capitol Hill with reaction. Changing focus. Following another setback, the Biden administration targets a new priority. The church in Germany. A report on clergy abuse finds fault with Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI. We have a report from Rome. And March for Life Eve. A day before the largest pro-life event, we assess the ways lawmakers are fighting to protect the unborn. On EWTN News Nightly for Thursday, January 20th, 2022. Thank you so much for being with us tonight on this Feast of St. Sebastian. I'm Tracy Sable. The year-long Democratic push for voting reform has died in the U.S. Senate. Republicans blocked the bill for a fifth time in the past 6 months with the help of 2 Democratic senators. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales tells us what happened.
Senators Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema for months had said that they would block any effort to change or drop the filibuster. Despite pressure from their Democratic colleagues, the measure to change the rules in the Senate failed.
On this vote, the yeas are 52, the nays are 48. The decision of the chair stands as a judgment of the Senate.
After the vote, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell says it took a bipartisan effort.
Arguably the most important day in the history of the Senate as an institution. Two courageous Democrats. Senate is preserved.
Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson tells me he commends both Senators Manchin and Sinema.
It was very fortunate that we had Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin show true political courage. I enjoyed being in the chamber and watching those 2 individuals stand up and honor their pledge.
But Democrats, including the vice president, vow this is not the end.
I am here to make a very strong statement that this is, whatever happens tonight in terms of the outcome of this vote, the president and I are not going to give up on this issue. This is fundamental to our democracy, and it is non-negotiable.
A sentiment echoed by other Democrats.
This will not stop us from using the Justice Department to enforce the law, and the right to vote is guaranteed by the Constitution. This will not stop us in stopping political gerrymandering in states across the country.
Prior to the vote, Senator James Langford used the debate on the rights of voters and pivoted to the lack of rights for the unborn.
Does this child get to vote 18 years from now? Or does she get disposed of? What happens to her?
The issue of voter reform may not be completely done. Senator Mitt Romney says that he's working with several Democrats on a bill to look at the certification of elections and to look deeper into what the vice president can or cannot do to ensure a peaceful transfer of power. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
Well, the outcome on Capitol Hill was a bitter defeat for President Joe Biden. He released a statement saying that he is profoundly disappointed but not deterred. His failure to pass voting reform comes after a new poll shows that his job approval was already low. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen.
Tracy, good evening to you. President Biden also said in his statement his administration will never stop fighting to protect the right to vote, and in the next sentence slammed Republicans.
Well, let me start.
President Joe Biden rips Republican lawmakers, writing in part, as dangerous new Republican laws plainly designed to suppress and subvert voting rights proliferate in states across the country. We will explore every measure and use every tool at our disposal to stand up for democracy. The defeat for the president comes as his approval numbers tank. A new poll from the Associated Press Nork Center for Public Affairs Research shows 56% of Americans disapprove of the job he's doing as president. Only 43% approve. And only 28% of Americans say they want him to run again in 2024.
Good afternoon, everyone.
The president also faced criticism after a nearly 2-hour-long news conference Wednesday in which he said a minor incursion by Russia into Ukraine would elicit a lesser response. Today, he tried to clarify his remarks.
I've been absolutely clear with President Putin. He has no misunderstanding. If any assembled Russian units move across the Ukrainian border, that is an invasion.
Overseas in Berlin, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken also trying to reassure U.S. allies if Russia invades Ukraine, as the president fears will happen,
that will be met with a swift, severe, united response from the United States and our allies and partners.
The president also met today with members of his Infrastructure Implementation Task Force. He's proud of the bipartisan law that provides money to rebuild America's roads and bridges.
We demonstrated that Democrats and Republicans can actually work together to get something done.
Also tonight, we're learning that the Supreme Court has refused to speed up the ongoing court case in Texas over the ban on most abortions, the heartbeat law. The Texas ban is likely to remain in effect for the foreseeable future and no doubt saving more lives. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
Well, the Pentagon has publicly released video from last summer's deadly U.S. drone strike, which killed 10 civilians in Afghanistan. It happened 3 days after the suicide bombing at Kabul airport, which killed 13 U.S. troops and more than 160 Afghans. The Pentagon initially claimed that it was targeting a suspected terrorist. It later called the drone strike a tragic mistake. Afghanistan is now the most dangerous country for the faithful. That is according to a group which fights Christian persecution. A report from Open Doors says Christians there face death if they do not follow Islamic rules. Previously, the most dangerous country was listed as North Korea. A long-awaited report on clergy sexual abuse in Germany is released, and it faults both Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI and Cardinal Reinhard Marx. The Archdiocese of Munich and Freising commissioned the report nearly 2 years ago. It examines allegations of abuse between 1945 and 2019 and is around 1,000 pages long. The future Pope Benedict led the Archdiocese from 1977 to 1982. Earlier today, he strongly denied cover-up allegations. Joining us now from Rome is Andreas Thonhauser, EWTN Vatican Bureau Chief. Andreas, great to see you. Tell us, what were the findings of that German report?
Yes, Tracy. Today, a German law firm presented its report on abuse cases in the Archdiocese of Munich. The study was commissioned by the diocese itself and covers more than 70 years, including the tenures of future Benedict XVI, Cardinal Friedrich Wetter, who succeeded him, and Cardinal Reinhard Marx, who has served as Archbishop of Munich and Freising since 2007. The report identified more than 400 cases in which most victims were male. The lawyers faulted Benedict XVI for a possible mishandling of 4 cases, Cardinal Wetter for 21 cases, and the current Archbishop of the diocese, Cardinal Marx, for 2 cases. Pope Emeritus is denying all allegations for a cover-up. He sent a statement of 82 pages confirming this position to the investigators ahead of the publication of the report, which the lawyers actually commended. The cases brought against Benedict XVI are not new. In the past, media has especially focused on the case of a priest who is accused of abusing at least 23 boys. While the lawyers believe that Benedict XVI must have been aware, his private secretary, Archbishop Georg Genswein, recently told a German newspaper that all claims suggesting that Pope Emeritus had knowledge of the priest's history of sexual allegations are wrong.
Andreas, what's the fallout here? I mean, what type of consequences will this report have?
While it is rather unlikely that charges will be brought against Benedict XVI, Cardinal Marx had already offered his resignation in light of the sexual abuse scandals in his diocese and under his tenure in May last year, which was refused. Cardinal Marx was not present at the press conference, but gave a statement afterwards asking the victims of the abuses for forgiveness. He said that the report is a very important step towards change, and Cardinal Marx used the term abuse crisis and highlighted the importance of the German synodal path as a way out of this crisis towards a reform of the Church. Now, we must not forget that this report also comes at a critical time for the German Church. The synodal path is nearing its end, in which church functionaries and bishops want to vote on core issues such as the Church's stance on sexuality, marriage, lay people and women priests. Observers warn that this path could result in a schism. The allegations against Benedict XVI could also be interpreted as a distraction from the situation in other dioceses and from other dignitaries.
And Andreas, not a whole lot of time left, but I do want to pivot onto something different. I know you're going to host the second EWTN Roman Nights panel discussion from St. Peter's Basilica. What more can you tell us about that?
Well, this Roman Nights episode's motto is Instruments of Peace, and while we're not planning on touching on the abuse report in Germany, which just came out today, it might very well be that since we have a longtime Vatican expert with us, Francis Rocker from the Wall Street Journal, who just published on this story as well, that we'll touch upon it. But in general, we want to talk about how we all can become instruments of peace in our jobs, families, and communities. The motto is taken from Pope Francis's message for this year's World Day of Peace. And I believe that especially in times when we are confronted with evil, such as those abuses we just heard from, it's very important to pray and think about also what each of us could do to bring some much needed light into this world.
Absolutely. Well, Andreas, thank you so much for your time today and speaking with us. We appreciate it. Andreas Thonhauser, EWTN Vatican Bureau Chief. Thank you again.
Thank you, Tracy.
In the capital of Liberia, at least 29 Christians have died from trampling each other while fleeing a street gang. Among the victims were 11 children and a pregnant woman. Police say a gang armed with knives attacked a church prayer gathering last night, causing hundreds to stampede while trying to escape. One person has been arrested. North Korea is threatening to resume testing nuclear weapons. The latest provocation comes from Kim Jong-un after a meeting with working party leaders from North Korea. North Korea accuses the U.S. of hostility and is positioning itself for, quote, a long-term confrontation. The U.S. has imposed new economic sanctions on the North after its recent launches of 4 missiles. Coming up, the new head of the Heritage Foundation tells us why pro-life issues are his top priority. Planned Parenthood is suing the state of South Dakota. The abortion provider wants to stop an executive order that would require a woman to make an in-person visit to a medical professional to receive a second dose of abortion pills. The state's new rule is expected to take effect by month's end. Well, a new project aims to look into the Biden administration and lawmakers who support, quote, radical left policies. The Heritage Foundation's Conservative Oversight Project launches today and will provide oversight to all levels of government. Heritage President Kevin Roberts says, quote, we cannot rely on legacy media, big tech, or government institutions to provide a truthful accounting of the damage being inflicted to our republic and the rights and freedoms for which it stands. And joining me now is Kevin Roberts, president of the Heritage Foundation. Kevin, welcome. Great to see you. I want to talk about the new initiative, but first, congratulations on your new role. Can you talk to us about what you hope to achieve in this position and also how your Catholic faith has helped to guide your career?
Well, thanks so much for having me. I'm a lifelong fan, as long as y'all have been on the air of EWTN. And as you know, I've led a couple of Catholic institutions. So my faith informs what I do every day. And of course, that involves a lot of people here at Heritage who are not Catholics. But the optimism that our faith gives us optimism for the future of this country. And so when I tell my colleagues here at Heritage that every day we're going to be on offense, what I mean by that is we are confident that we're going to restore America back to its greatness in spite of all the obstacles that are facing us today.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, the Heritage Foundation launched the Conservative Oversight Project. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that and why you feel that's so important?
I think one of the gravest threats facing Americans is that we've allowed the federal government to do things that are unconstitutional and frankly unjust. And so part of our being on offense every day on behalf of the American people is being based here in Washington, D.C., sort of behind enemy lines, if you will, putting the executive branch, the legislative branch on notice that if they step out of bounds of the Constitution, out of bounds of the natural law, that Heritage is going to call a spade a spade. We don't care who they are. We don't care what the offenses are. We are going to name names. And we're doing this not to be snarky, not to be jerks, but for righteousness. It is really crucial for our rights, for this republic, for the unborn, for that matter, to reveal the abuses that have happened by those in power today. We're going to do that. We're going to propose solutions, and we want to get those investigations behind us so we can advance a positive, conservative set of solutions that allow us to restore this country.
Well, today marks 1 year since President Biden took the oath of office. What do you think of his job performance so far?
Well, look, I pray for President Biden every day. I respect him and his office. But I'm going to talk to you as a historian, and I'm an adopted Texan, so I'll be candid. He's awful. He's already one of the worst presidents in history. He's a disaster. His press conference yesterday showed that, and I really do say that with as much charity as I can muster. We need to be praying for him and for the future of this country. Therefore, the best possible thing we can do is to stop his agenda every day, stop the agenda of those who support him in the House and the Senate. And this is very important. It isn't enough just for us to stand athwart history, to quote William Buckley, and yell no. It's really important for us to talk about what we're going to do when our side is in power. That's how we need to frame our resistance, because ultimately we have to give a reason to Americans to support our agenda.
Yeah, you had mentioned the press conference last night. I want to talk a little bit more about that. I want to get your thoughts on that. The president faced a number of wide-ranging questions, everything from COVID to Ukraine and Russia, and even his cognitive abilities.
Well, I'm afraid on the latter point that there's a serious issue there, but I'm just a policy guy and a historian, so I'll focus on those, and I pray for him on those issues. Look, if we look at Afghanistan, if we look at his management of domestic policy, if we look at how he contradicted himself on his own answers in yesterday's press conference, we have a real policy nightmare at work here. We know that if we look at the border. We know that for our institutions that are faith-based. It's a terrible administration when it comes to religious liberty, a terrible administration when it comes to the unborn. We put all of this together, and we just need to call a spade and say that a slight majority of the American people got the answer wrong last fall. That has happened in American history. But what has also happened in American history is that we recognize that, we move forward in the next election, and this is really crucial, that those who come into power the next election, they need to govern as conservatives. They actually need to make good on what they tell us they're going to do.
And Kevin, before we wrap up, not a whole lot of time left, but I really do want to quickly ask you this question. As you know, tomorrow is the March for Life. I want to know what that means to you and also your organization.
The pro-life movement is the single greatest issue in my life. I've led hundreds of students to Washington, D.C. from Louisiana and Texas and Wyoming. It's such a privilege this year just to drive 20 minutes as a family of 6 and be here. It means everything to us, and also everything to us here at Heritage. We'll be hosting a large number of people here with hot chocolate and coffee, giving them some hospitality that unfortunately our mayor in D.C. doesn't want many places to be doing tomorrow.
Well, sir, thank you so much for your time, and again, congratulations on your new position.
Thanks, and God bless you.
Up next, hear about a new initiative to strengthen the mission of Catholic health care. A new organization seeks to provide patients with health care that is aligned with the moral, ethical, and social teachings of Christ. The Catholic Healthcare Leadership Alliance will educate Catholic medical professionals, defend freedom of conscience and religious liberty, and promote the sanctity of life. And joining us now is Dr. Stephen White, president of the Catholic Healthcare Leadership Alliance and past president of the Catholic Medical Association. Dr. White, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here, Tracy.
Great to have you. So tell us a little bit more about this alliance and why you decided to form it.
So it goes back decades, and the people that are involved in this alliance have been in this work in healthcare for many years. The 5 organizations that are the founding organizations, the Catholic Medical Association, the Catholic Bar Association, the National Catholic Bioethics Center, the NC, the Christus Medicus organization, have been in this work for years. And basically it was the inspiration, we believe, of the Holy Spirit, but it came through Bishop James Conley of Lincoln, Nebraska. He suggested about 3 years ago, that we needed to pull together, we needed to form an alliance of Catholic healthcare organizations with all facets of medicine covered: the law, theology, medicine, bioethics, pastoral care, administration, business, because healthcare has become very complicated. Yes, we want to follow the moral and ethical teachings as outlined in the ERDs, and yes, you know, we want to follow Christ and bring Christ's love into the profession. But you know, in the Good Samaritan's parable, it was the physician ministering to Christ, the suffering servant, but he did utilize the inn. I always like to say the inn's just gotten very complicated. So by creating an umbrella group like this and getting it started, we want to bring all of those different facets of medicine together so that we can provide the leadership that's necessary to guide us away from what we're seeing today, which is the imposition of the culture of death on the healthcare professionals, upon our patients, and really not providing them the care that they need. And we're really there's an existential threat, Tracy, based on regulations and laws that are being considered in Congress, for example, now in this administration, that could, if passed and actually implemented, outlaw Catholic health care. And not only Catholic, but Hippocratic care.
And that is so difficult. Talk about, you know, what that means for the patients to have this alliance, to have that Catholic health care.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if there's any single reason why we need this, it's for patient care. Patients want physicians that love them. Patients want physicians who follow not only their religious and moral ethical beliefs, but their medical judgments. Some of these decisions and regulations that are being put in place would deny me, a physician with 40 years experience and 12 years of training, to do what I felt was right for my patient. So patients will suffer as a consequence of this, and they won't have physicians that do align with their ethical and moral beliefs, their values, and physicians that are really serving them, believing that they're serving Christ.
Yeah, and that is so important right now. If anybody's watching, and I'm sure everybody's thinking this, how can they get information on it and find out more?
Yes, thank you. We have a website that's up and running and will be expanded upon. We want to be a resource center. Somebody said today at the launch, a one-stop shop for people on all aspects of care. They can go to CatholicHealthAlliance.org. We're up. There'll be an exclusive in the register to give additional information very soon, and we're going to make ourselves available. You can contact us through the website. We will see that you know, your questions are answered. We're there for the patients. We're there for the professionals. We're there for the whole organization of healthcare. And the other point that I'd like to make is that this is a seed being planted. There are many organizations, as we know. What a wonderful time to launch this with the march coming up tomorrow. There are literally hundreds of organizations that have been involved in pro-life work, which obviously impacts healthcare. And we're looking forward to working with all of them. We're all the body of Christ. And in order for the Holy Spirit to work effectively, we believe we have to unite as the body of Christ so that we can have a strong, united, clear voice that promotes the gospel.
Yeah, we don't have a whole lot of time left, less than a minute or so. But anything else that you would like to add that maybe we didn't talk about, you think it's really important for our viewers to know? Just that, again,
the ministry of healthcare in the Catholic Church dates back to Christ, 2 millennia. The Religious Sisters, one of our first member organization, other than the core group, is the Franciscan Alliance in Indiana. And they have sustained Catholic healthcare in this country, as so many other religious orders have, for 150, 200 years. That's being threatened now. And Franciscan Alliance joined us basically because they want to preserve that heritage and that history, and that's what we're set forth to do. Yeah, well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about this, and God bless you. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you so much. God bless you. And finally tonight, a reminder, the 49th Annual March for Life in the nation's capital is tomorrow, and you can watch it right here on EWTN. Coverage starts at 8 a.m. Eastern with Mass from the Basilica of the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception, followed by special coverage at 9:30 a.m., including reports from the rally, speeches, and the march to the Supreme Court. It is all right here on EWTN. And we thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.